The Triumph TR line of sports cars is amongst the most legendary in British motoring history. The TR3 is around 70 years old now and it's fast becoming a collector's item. But does it deserve that status, and how does it hold up 7 decades on? Let's take this gorgeous imported example for a drive and find out. The TR2 had proven something of a revolution. Standard Triumph had proven itself perfectly capable of competing in what was now a bustling British sports car market. But it was also very much more racing, or at least racetrack oriented. It was hard, it was brutal, it was hard work to drive on the road, and really it was at its best when it was racing. So Triumph decided to see if they could refine and hone the formula to make it just that little bit more friendly to your road drivers and your weekend enthusiasts. The aptly named Triumph TR3 came along in 1955, and despite common misconception, it was not designed by Michelotti for once. It was actually a Triumph designed in-house, although Michelotti did have a hand in the gorgeous TR3 Speciale concept. But as for the standard TR3, I think it's gorgeous. It's flowing, it's elegant, it's tightly proportioned, it's gorgeous. You can see why people think this was starred by Michelotti. It does look positively Italian, like an Alfa Romeo or a baby Maserati or something. It's beautiful, and it is for me one of Triumph's best looking sports car efforts. Much like the TR2 before it, the TR3 was a roadster first and foremost. The hood was a slightly complicated snap-on affair, the windows were these sliding pieces of perspex, and the heater was incredibly basic, and you can actually only shut it off originally under the bonnet. You couldn't control it from in the cabin at first. Clearly Triumph were of the belief that if you wanted a roadster, you were going to live with it. But what of the engine for this hardcore convertible sports car then? Well, unlike Jaguar, who of course had its racing honed and developed XK straight 6, and unlike Austin Healey, who could pillage big, meaty saloon car engines from elsewhere in the stable, standard Triumph didn't really have a motor like that was fit for this compact, hardcore little sports car. In fact, the engine in the TR3 can trace its roots back to the Ferguson T20 tractor. Yes, really, the 2-litre wet-liner 4-cylinder petrol engine in the front of these was originally used in the little grey Fergie that helped popularise using tractors on a farm, full stop. That sounds odd for a sports car, but it's not actually the worst decision in the world. For a start, the engine from a tractor has to be tough and durable, so these engines are fantastically durable and well-lived by the standards of the day. They're also easy to work on, because if it does go wrong, the farmer needs to be able to fix it in the field with a brick and a piece of string. And if they can do that, putting that engine in a sports car means that your weekend enthusiast can service it and fix it and work on it themselves. And third of all, the engine you got in the front of the TR3 is by no means a standard tractor unit. It got bigger twin SU carburettors, a ported head and ported manifold, which meant the power went up from 23 in the tractor to 100 horsepower in the TR3. Not to mention that's some 10% gain over the TR2. Now, that doesn't sound like much by modern standards, but in a sub-1,000 kilo sports car, 100 horsepower is plenty. As I'll now demonstrate. Oh, it does go. That is impressively quick actually, especially for its mid-50s origins. 0 to 60 comes up in 10.5 seconds, and the top speed is 105 miles an hour. Again, small beer by modern standards, but for a mid-1950s little sports car with an engine that could trace its roots back to a tractor, that's not bad at all, is it? The other benefit of this engine is because it's a workhorse at heart rather than this high-revving race-bred monster, it's quite a lugger. It's got torque from low down the rev range. Just put a bit of throttle on and it's ready to go. What about the platform for this sports car though? Well, the TR3 took the successful formula of the TR2 and just simply evolved it. We've got double wishbone front suspension and a live axle rear, but it's also got wheels that are 1/2 inch wider than on the TR2, that's 4.5 inches now, and it retained that same formula of being low with short travel suspension and a wide track. And as a result, while it's not the comfiest sports car in the world, you can see I am bouncing around a little bit here, it is a fantastically nimble handling machine. The steering is so light and direct, it really does turn on the flick of a wrist. It doesn't feel unsettled. You fling it into a corner like this and you expect it to get a bit fidgety, but you know what, it's fantastically composed. Feel the front end tuck in, the rear end just starts to kick a little bit if you take a liberty with it. Down into third here, fling it in. There she goes. It maybe doesn't come to you quite as easily as it does in an MG Midget, where the thing almost takes itself round the corner. The TR3 does make you work for it in almost a baby XK120 type fashion, where you have to steer from the shoulders, although it's not quite as heavy and challenging as one of those cars or a big Healy. You've got to work for it, but if you do, the rewards come. Flick it in. Oh, it grips. Yes. Only skinny little tyres, but there's no weight and there's not a huge amount of power, don't forget, so you can keep it on the straight and narrow remarkably easily. All the time you've got the torque of that Ferguson tractor engine pulling you along, fling it in, and it just grips. And because it's so low and because it's so light, you feel like you're going so much faster than you actually are. But it's good fun. You have to work for it, but if you do, the rewards come. This is what driving a sports car used to be like. It doesn't have traction control and stability control and 8-inch wide wheels to help you out. You've got to be the handling. It will only handle as well as the effort you put into it. Proper driver's car, this. Oh, it's great fun. And because the steering's so direct, and because it's short wheelbase and rear wheel drive, and because you don't actually have that much tyre, even with the extra half an inch of wheel over the TR2, you can play with it a bit. Just flick it into a corner and you can feel the rear end start to kick slightly. It's playful. It's fantastic. There was a bit of Bond refinement as well. For a start, the brakes. Whoa! First ever front disc brakes on a British car in 1956, no less. And they are mightily impressive. Just stomp on it. Whoa! No ABS, remember? They're great. Really confidence inspiring. I've driven loads of cars in the 50s and 60s where the brakes are more theoretical and you kind of subconsciously pull back as you press the brake pedal, not knowing if you're going to stop, but not in this. In 1957 came the version we're driving today, the TR3A, and the A stood for more refinement. You got that wider grille, which only added to the gorgeous looks. For the first time ever, you got exterior door handles, which, believe it or not, was a refinement back in the mid-50s, along with a locking boot lid and a toolkit as standard. So you really could work on this thing in the field, or certainly on the B road. Now, as you can probably tell as I'm driving today, this is not the most refined of cars to just cruise in. It is quite noisy and it is a bit bouncy. And the seating position is pretty dire, to be honest. I'm having to sit spread eagle and I've got the flyaway handbrake and the gear lever digging into my left knee, so it's not a GT car by any means, but I do fit in here. I'm not touching the ceiling, I can sit back properly, not bashing elbows with my passenger. You could spend hours in one of these just flinging it down your favourite road and having a cracking time of it. You could even get the TR3A with a bored out 2.2 litre version of that same engine. That offered 105 horsepower and a decent dollop more torque to make it a better long distance touring machine. The TR3A was the formula even further refined. Small wonder Triumph sold 58,000 of them before the TR3B came along in 1962, and later in life offered a full synchro gearbox to make it even more livable. Triumph had aspirations to take the TR3 racing, but that aspiration was nearly stubbed out before they'd even begun. Several fatal accidents in various motorsports, including Le Mans, by open cars when they rolled over, meant that open top racers were banned completely at one stage. But Triumph's competition manager Ken Richardson rightly recognised there was no reason that an open car has to stay open. The steel hardtop was fitted, which effectively then saw it rebranded the TR3 Coupe, and in that guise it could go racing. Let's not forget the TR3 handled well. It was fast, and with that tractor-derived engine it was durable, and as a result when it went racing in the right hands it was fantastically competitive. It won numerous outright team and class victories in the RAC Rally, the Monte Carlo Rally, the Alpine Rally, the Liège-Rome-Liège, the Acropolis Rally, even the Corsica Rally. The TR3 became an absolute legend, to the point where even today it's still used in historic rallying. This particular car that I'm driving today has driven in the historic Monte Carlo Rally recreation. It's covered in stickers from all sorts of motorsport events, and you can't fail to notice this fantastic rally light on the ceiling. It's wonderful, and when you're driving on a winding road like this with the hardtop on it, as the competition cars did, you can't help but feel like a bit of a period racer. I need some flying goggles and some tweed. Get me some leather driving gloves. Oh yes! And America loved the TR3 as well. That gorgeous exotic styling, the fun handling and the compact dimensions compared to a lot of big American sports cars meant it was a sales success over there, and thousands were exported to the States. This particular car in fact was originally an American example that was imported, restored and then right-hand drive converted. So this little TR3 has lived a hell of a life when you think about it. As in fact did the TR3 in general. It lived all the way through the 1950s, only eventually giving way to the TR4, which refined it further wanted to make it more of a road-oriented sports car. And then of course the TR5 when we got that big meaty 6-pot in it. The Triumphs carved their path through being that much rawer and that much more exciting and involving. A car that wouldn't hold your hand, but would shake your hand if it knew you were putting the effort in. This is a fabulous classic sports car, and all for a fraction of the price that you'd pay for an Austin Healey 3000 or an XK150. Round the roundabout, let's fling it in. Feel it start to slide, there she goes. Hey, yes! Oh, brilliant! What a car! It's pretty early in the year as we film this, but if I'm going to be honest, it's going to take a lot this year to drive a car that's more fun than this little TR3A. And if that isn't a glowing recommendation, I don't know what is. Fabulous little car. But what do you think? Do you love the Triumph TR3 as much as I clearly seem to? Or would you prefer an MG of some sort instead? Do go and watch our other Triumph videos on the channel. We've done reviews on the TR7 and the TR6 with a buying guide there as well, and countless MG videos if you fancy some of that action. But in the meantime, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Classics World for 2 new videos every single week, and we'll see you very soon. I'm off to go rallying. Yes!